Friends, let's make no mistake. We are facing a global water crisis.
Here's the fact on water. If you have a business anywhere in the world, it's going to be directly impacted by the global water crisis.
What if the world's CEOs could reverse the water crisis simply by working together? That's what the Water Resilience Coalition aims to do, and we're going to do it by 2050.
We have to come together to realize that corporations have a powerful platform, NGOs have a powerful mission, and if you bring those things together, we can create powerful outcomes.
We really need to scale up innovative practices and technologies. We need to mobilize more and better targeted financing. And we absolutely need to generate and share more and higher quality data and information to guide policy and decision making.
You need a systemic solution to mobilize different actors in the local communities to all contribute to balancing the local watershed.
All of our processes were basically built upon the premise that water is going to be plentiful and free forever. That was true for about 100 years. It's not going to be true going forward.
We call upon companies here to join the Water Resilience Coalition and commit to helping us solve the world water and climate crises.
Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. Welcome to today's session, Resilient Together, Water and Climate Adaptation, Collective Action in the Business Sector. My name is Jason Morrison. I serve as the president of the Pacific Institute and the head of the CO Water Mandate. The CO Water Mandate is a 15-year-old corporate water stewardship platform housed within the UN Global Compact and co-managed between the Pacific Institute and the UN Global Compact. Today's session is being organized by the Water Resilience Coalition, the collective action initiative of the CO Water Mandates. And the WRC was launched on World Water Day of last year with the recognition by leading businesses that there was an urgent need to elevate the ambition and accelerate action on water. WRC members individually and collectively committing to have a net positive water impact on water through their individual and joint actions. Water positive within the context of the WRC's work is defined as addressing the three major dimensions of water stress: water quantity, water quality, and water accessibility. The WRC has also set a 2030 ambition to have a positive water impact in 100 water-stressed basins and to enable climate-resilient wash for over 100 million people. WRC's membership is now 27 members strong, with new members joining here at COP, LG, and Brazil, representing Korea and Brazil, Braskem, representing these two new companies and regions of the world. At this COP, we are looking to approve the CEO Circle's acknowledgement of the 2030 collective ambition and roadmap, and we hope to be able to bring more attention to that in the weeks to come. In terms of today's program, we're going to have first a keynote speech by Sanda Onjiomba, the CEO and Executive Director of the UN Global Compact, who will talk about raising the ambition in the corporate sector on water and climate. And then we will have a number of panel sessions, the first being one on focusing on scaling collective action, which will be led by Kellyanne Naylor, the Associate Director for WASH at UNICEF, and panelists Ewan Andrew, President of Global Supply Chain and Procurement and Chief Sustainability Officer at Diageo, Claire Lund, Vice President of Sustainability at GlaxoSmithKline, who is here today, and Secretary Wade Crawford from California Natural Resources Agency. The second panel is going to focus on collective action initiatives towards basin health and resilient access, and it will be led by Andrea Eriksson, Managing Director for Water Security at the Nature Conservancy, who is here with us in the room. Panelists being Vedika Bandarkar, Chief Operating Officer for Water.org, Andre Fure, the Global Director for Water Sustainability at Anheuser-Busch InBev, and Emilio Tenuta, Chief Sustainability Officer at Ecolab. We will then have Sanjeev Chadha, Vice Chair of the Pacific Institute, provide closing remarks. So, without further ado, let me hand it over to Kellyanne Naylor. No, sorry, to Sandal Jiambo.
Thank you. Great. Well, good afternoon, everybody. And Jason, thank you very much. It's been odd. It's been a year and a half of seeing Jason on the screen. So exciting to see him in person and the rest of you. So to my remarks. First, thank you very much, Jason, for inviting me to speak about raising ambition and business ambition specifically. As you all must know, the UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres has identified the most recent report from the IPCC as being a code red for humanity. And to avert this catastrophe, he's calling on all of us to join forces, because urgently we must work together to raise our ambition. And firmly at the center of this is certainly the private sector. So at this critical COP, where we know that pledges are being made and progress is being assessed under the Paris Agreement of 2015, all of this lies under the microscope, and adaptation and indeed resilience have stormed onto the stage like never before. And I'm both pleased and relieved to note that fresh water has arrived with a bang, and in this first ever water pavilion. So congratulations, Jason and colleagues, because it's also fittingly located in the blue zone. So water, as we know, has gained tremendous prominence, partially due to the dramatic events we've seen this year, record-setting drought and heat waves across western United States and in Sao Paulo, Brazil, severe flooding in Europe, and even in New York, where I live. And Hurricane Ida, as we know, has caused severe flooding and inundated our sewage systems. So all of this really points to increased concerns about fresh water availability, quality, and access. And we all know that truly there must be a looming crisis around the corner. But as we say, and as we firmly believe for business, that with every crisis there certainly is opportunity. And if we imagine water as a critical blue thread that connects all of our ecosystems, it'll continue to sustain all our life on Earth. So seen in this light, and in light of what we believe as a UN Global Compact, water is truly a foundation for sustainable development, and it's critical to the world's response for climate change. In order for us to build thriving, climate-resilient communities, ecosystems, and economies, we do need clean, reliable, and accessible water resources and healthy fresh water systems. Collectively, if we act now, we have the power to respond to the climate and water crisis and contribute to the sustainable development objectives that we all seek. Water's central role here at COP26 gives us an extraordinary platform for us to discuss, deliberate, and disseminate ambitious plans. Again, from our perspective at the UN Global Compact, we understand that companies must elevate both their efforts and their ambitions, setting convention-shattering goals and targets that have meaning, but that must also take real action to scale. And that's why, again, we integrated net positive water impact within our ambition accelerator on the SDGs, which requires companies to work both individually and collectively to achieve our goals. Indeed, nothing the UN does exists in a vacuum. And the climate crisis that we have seen is bigger than any individual and certainly any institution. So acting alone, acting in silos, or even bilateral engagement will not solve the challenges of today or of the future. But we know that collectively we can multiply progress. The private sector, governments, civil society, NGOs, and the UN must explore new ways to collaborate across cultures and across sectors. We must join forces for equitable, inclusive outcomes for resilient results. So to build long-term resilience and adapt to the challenges of climate change, we must build a robust program of work and work with coalitions that can translate real impact on the ground and certainly in the water. And that's why we're so excited about today's session, to explore how collaboration can multiply impact and certainly help avert the climate-related crises that we face. And of course, fresh water remains central and critical to all climate solutions. This very idea led us to launch the CO Water Mandate and the Water Resilience Coalition. It's a CO-led initiative, as you saw in the video, that is committed to reducing water stress by 2050 in some of the most vulnerable freshwater basins around the world. Working with some of the planet's largest companies, and we thank you for your participation, we have the potential to positively impact 1/3 of the world's freshwater use. Our approach to fresh water must also address environmental and societal aspects of climate change, placing nature at the center. We are truly encouraged by the growing concerns within the private sector that recognize this urgent need to protect our global fresh water supply. And in the Global Compact and with the Coalition, we continue to call on private sector actors to join us in this effort of uniting business for a better world. Thank you very much. Thank you, Jason.
Thank you, Sanda. For those that have been in the water space, working in basins that are stressed, you'll know that partnerships and collaboration around water can be very hard. Yet we also know that they are an imperative to driving impact at scale. The only way that you really will address water resilience and water security in these regions is through collaborative partnerships. So the focus of today is to talk a little bit about how we can collaborate and scale those partnerships, starting with our first session and our newest partner. I mentioned some of our newest member companies of the WRC, but really excited about the newest partnership that's formed here in COP with UNICEF. And Kellyanne Naylor, over to you to run this next session.
Jason, thank you so much, and good morning from New York. And it's a pleasure to be able to participate in this session. And I think, Jason, I was just thinking as I was listening that I've been part of events, for this whole week, and I just am so excited about this one because I feel like we're really bringing a promising and innovative solution to our greatest common challenge of having a livable planet. And I think it's really in this true spirit of partnership and collective action, of course, the theme of this discussion, that I'm delighted to start off this next segment with an announcement of this new partnership between UNICEF and the UN Global Compact CEO Water Mandate. And through this partnership, we're aiming at furthering the objectives of the CEO Water Mandate to mobilize a critical mass of business leaders to address the global water challenges through corporate water stewardship. We're also looking at how this brings and accelerates progress on the Sustainable Development Goals, specifically SDG 6, and can help us really build in this climate resilience in the partnerships that we have with governments, the private sector, and civil society with the partnerships in CEO Water Mandate. And just as some background, over the past year, UNICEF has been increasingly engaging with governments and private sector partners to support the water security agenda, which we launched last March in the sidelines of the President of the General Assembly's one-day meeting on water. And we launched this Water Security for All initiative with the aim to reach over 450 million children, totally 1.4 billion people living in areas with high and extremely high water vulnerability, and we want to reach them with climate resilient wash services. So I think we can see how these pieces come together. To be able to really build on the partnership that we've already had with CEO Water Mandate through initiatives like the Wash for Work initiative. And I'm just so pleased to announce that we have been able to formally, reach this agreement and to mobilize the full convening powers to bring public sector government and private sector corporations together to identify this opportunities for co-investment so we can achieve results and measure them together. So this announcement, I think, links us really well to the discussion that we want to have today on scaling collective action. So just together with me in my role as the Global Director of Water, Sanitation and Hygiene at UNICEF, I'm really delighted to be accompanied by, as Jason mentioned, Ewan Andrew, who is the President of the Global Supply Chain and Procurement and Chief Sustainability Officer at Diageo, a global leader in beverage and the beverage market. We've also have Claire Lend, who is the Vice President of Sustainability at GSK, which is a science-led global healthcare company. And we have Secretary Wade Crawford from California, Secretary of Natural Resources. So we really wanted to have this as a discussion today. So I'm going to start first with the question to each of our panelists, but then we want to get into a real conversation on this topic. So Ewan, I'm going to reach out first to you. It's nice, I see you there on the screen. You know, presumably your company relies on water as a key resource, and that this really requires partnerships with governments and communities to ensure the long-term stability, sustainability of this resource. So, you know, besides that, Diageo is also one of the companies that's involved in the Water Resilience Coalition. So we're wondering if you can tell us about the enabling environment conditions that you think are necessary to be able to scale this partnership to achieve the ambitious goals of the Water Resilience Coalition. And, you know, we'd love to hear, you know, your personal perspectives on this from your experience. Thanks so much. Over to you.
Thank you, Kelly, and congratulations on the partnership announcement. We are a proud founder member, and look, water is very important to our organisation. It's very important to me. We're really committed to preserving the natural resources that we all depend on. We do a lot in partnership with many stakeholders across climate change, and I think that, you know, water stress, biodiversity loss, everything about a more sustainable world is linked into what we're trying to do. And you bring up the question when you talk about enabling the conditions. And I always think about a few things. I think about scale, acceleration, and we talked about coalitions. But the reality for me is when we come back down to what we do every day, I always think it's a bit like when you catch up with your friends or you meet new colleagues at events like COP26. As you depart, you tend to say a lot of, you know, really intentional things, right? And it's about, see you again soon, let's catch up, let's go to dinner. But actually what makes a difference and what we all need to do is we need to say, okay, when? Who's coming? Let's put a date in the diary. Let's get the coalition moving or the partnership moving. And these things make a big difference. So what we're trying to do is to have under we announced it last year, our 2030 Spirit of Progress ambitions, our 10-year action plan that comes with science-based targets that are certified. But ultimately, the intention of that is to put ourselves out as a leading company and a leading voice with platforms to do good in society, linked to our business goals and our business ambitions. But when you take something like water, and it's such a precious resource, we want to make sure that we're managing it really well. And we know that there are communities all over the world, and we've got operations and employees. And actually, our business is based off a lot of these communities too, in terms of being able to enjoy our products. So we target in about particularly those water-stressed worlds. And I'd say that the approach really tries to look at the multiple dependencies of water in the local community and actually try and create economic development, try and create a more inclusive environment in which people are working in. And we know that in water and in water-stressed environments, particularly women and children, and the partnership with UNICEF is great. They have to spend so much time in vulnerable situations to get the very basis of what they need for life. And therefore, we try and go in and establish partnerships that are broader than just the water access. It's about skills for life. It's about securing communities with economic growth. And I think many people will be looking to do the same intentional things. But my big message really is, as you come into those conditions, is actively take it forward. And that's what the CEO coalitions do. But it also comes down into the organizations to build different behaviors and cultures together. Kelly.
Great. Ian, thank you so much for that. And I really took away from what you said about how you're able to be kind of thinking these business goals, integrating this into your plans, and really I took away really this idea of concretization of action, of making sure that this is actually resulting in impact on the communities and that you're working in. I think it's really exciting to hear how you're looking at building in the benefits, not only around kind of the business opportunity, but really these benefits of overall water management, also for human and socioeconomic development. And I think that's really what, for me, is really exciting about seeing how, we've talked a lot about how all these pieces come together, but it's great to be actually now seeing it in practice. So congratulations for that experience, and thanks for sharing it. Claire, now we're going to come over to you. And your company, GlaxoSmithKline, is also a member of the Water Resilience Coalition. And I'm wondering if you can tell us, really kind of along the same lines, what are the enabling conditions that your company needs to be able to scale partnerships to achieve these ambitious goals of the Water Resilience Coalition?
Thanks, Kelly. Yeah, I'm here. I'm not sure whether I'm supposed to be you might have my side-on view, Kelly, so I'm very...
look at the real people.
Oh, we're getting used to hybrid. There we go, I can see you. So thank you very much for that. And yes, I mean, we're a global healthcare company. So, I mean, to be honest, what everybody's now really realizing is climate change, nature loss, obviously have a direct impact on water quality, water access, water security. But that is a human health impact. So that's one of our big objectives. And we look at it in terms of enabling conditions, but also what are the three areas that we as a healthcare company can bring as a unique perspective. The first is not unique to us and is actually where we encourage everybody to look at, which is understand where your hotspots are, not only for your own sites, but also your supply chain, your suppliers. So we've mapped a lot of that. We've then set targets, which is not just about our environmental impact, but also the resilience faces. So what's the flooding impact? What's the risk of us not getting water to those factories and those facilities, which means we cannot provide medicines. So it's really mapping that out. It's really then identifying what are the hotspots, and we've mapped out about 8 water stress basins we're focusing on. We've set targets not only for our sites for water stewardship, water reduction, but then in water stressed basins to really focus on the water positive, the water neutrality aspect. And that's when you start realizing you can't do that on your own. So that's the first piece. The second piece is we have been working for a long time on WASH programs as well. So we've looked at sort of 20 projects, again, impacting 10,000 children and their families. But again, we need the scale. So my messaging is we've done the first thing, environmental impact, starting to set targets. The second thing we've started, it's having an impact. And then the third one is we've really, frankly, this is more specific to our sector, using our scientific expertise to support scientific discoveries of prevention. So looking at malaria, rotavirus, and that's really where we can come in and support on some of the resilience and the healthcare resilience of those diseases that are likely to be amplified by water stress and climate change situations as well. And I think just to your point, Kelly, on the enabling conditions, once you understand the impact and actually can share with your board the financial risks and the implications of that, they get on board pretty quickly. The second one, though, and I talked about the other two actions, is we can't do that on our own. We aren't big enough. Actually, we cannot do this water basin systems approach on our own. So hence, obviously, as you said, why we joined the Water Resilience Coalition, and actually working in partnership now, we've started with the basins in South Africa, because that's one of the basins where we'd already reduced a lot of our own water use. So we've gone pretty far on that journey. Now we've got to work in partnership and collaboration to look at the sort of water, basin approach. And that's, removing alien species and looking at restoration of those basins through green engineering. So using nature as part of the solution as well. But I think my key message in the enabling piece is understand your impact, focus on what you can do, but then frankly, join coalitions and partnerships pretty quickly. Hopefully that gave you the summary.
Yeah, Claire, thank you so much. Yeah, no, I really, I think it was great. And I think, we were talking, with Ewan a lot about kind of aligning. And I think we heard that also, as you're saying, about setting targets, about, about having a concrete way forward. But I think what you also really highlighted was this need to really engage across sectors. And you talked about the fact that this isn't only about water, it's also about health. And I was thinking a little bit about how in this partnership, I think we are really able to engage across these sectors much better because we're actually bringing the best of what each of us has to offer, which is different, to be able to try to tackle this problem. And I think that is really an encouraging opportunity, and hopefully, we can create kind of a positive spiral of impact through our joint action. So thank you so much for that really insightful intervention. And now we're moving to our third discussant and panel member, Secretary Wade Crawford. You're representing the government side here in this conversation, and I've been told that the Department of Natural Resources in California has some experience in these types of public-private partnerships. So let me again ask you the same question, looking at it really from a government perspective. What do you see as the enabling conditions that are needed to scale partnerships to achieve these ambitious goals of the Water Resilience Coalition? So thank you, Secretary, and over to you.
Thanks so much, Kellyanne. And it's inspiring to be here, both in this discussion and at COP26. For those of you who are joining remotely, we are in the heart of Pavilion Hall. And for good reason. Water is at the heart of the climate challenge we face. Our colleague in California, Peter Glick, once told me if climate change is a shark, water is its teeth. Meaning, for a lot of places of the world, certainly including California, some of the challenges and threats that are driven most intensely from climate change is expressed through water. Now, let's be honest, governments from any continent in the world could be sitting where I am and telling you that we have to build more water resilience. I'll tell you a brief story about California to give you a sense that this is happening everywhere in the global south, in the global north, across continents. I live in the capital city of Sacramento, and this year we broke a dubious record of the highest number of days in a row without any measurable rain, 221 days. We're in the middle of a pernicious drought. Interestingly, the storm that broke that streak was an atmospheric river event that dropped the highest amount of rain ever recorded in a single day. So this weather whiplash is very real in California right now in real time. And we recognize that our economy, which we're proud to call the 5th largest economy in the world, the prosperity, the equality and equity that we want to build relies on stability of our water system. So we know we have a lot to do in investing, working with our corporate partners, our communities to address, Jason's 3 challenges of water quantity, water quality, and water accessibility. One thing that I think, answering your question, Kellyanne, that we can do to ensure that we have the strong corporate partnerships we need is to be clear and transparent in government about where we're moving with our investments and with our water system. We know in California we need to both modernize our infrastructure, which was built last century and is not well positioned to address climate change this century. But we also have to update our approaches to water, including our laws and our regulations. We in California, I think, are like a lot of governments that are trying to step back and be very strategic about how we're going to build that water resilience. And we've established what's called a water resilience portfolio, recognizing what we need to do as a state to achieve that drought resilience, that flooding, that resilience against flood. And it involves many things, including diversifying our water supplies, expanding our water recycling and our stormwater capture, improving water conservation, creating shifting a system that's centralized and static and rigid, and making our water systems much more decentralized, dynamic, and flexible. So from my perspective, If we're going to continue to grow and provide prosperity in California and increasingly ensure that all Californians benefit from that prosperity, it has to be in partnership with our business sector. Simply put, our business sector is the engine that provides what we consider to be, our California dream. So I would say, our action to build water resilience is not only a climate imperative, it's also an opportunity. And we have a ton of corporate partners that are doing everything from helping us invest in that modernization, helping us understand and build the system of the future that we're going to need. We have an incredibly innovative tech sector who's bringing the power of technology, particularly distributed technology, to help support how we build that resilience. Things like forecast-informed reservoir operations, where we're operating the same reservoirs we have, but more flexibly as a result of better modeling on incoming storms. Likewise, just a couple weeks ago, we were proud to help announce a product called OpenET, or Open Evapotranspiration, which is a partnership of NASA and Google and so many others that's actually using satellite data to help farmers and water users understand the amount of water that they're using in their fields. Blows my mind that you can actually use satellite data that NASA derives for the benefit of improving water efficiency. Our ag sector, which is an important part of our economy and a really sort of the lifeblood of a part of our state, is getting more efficient and technology forward by the day. So there are so many ways, Kellyanne, that we are working with the corporate sector, but we need continued leadership. I'll just say, I have to applaud everything you all are doing and thank the companies that are stepping up on this. I think you all recognize that your business future, our future, relies on stability and resilience. So we're glad to play whatever part we can.
Thank you so much, Secretary Crawford. And I really, I think anyone who can bring together NASA, Google, farmers in the Central Valley, the ag sector, and government, that's really, really exciting opportunity. And I think that's exactly the type of solutions that we're going to need to be able to tackle the scale of this crisis. And I think, as you said, we need to see it as a common solution for economy, prosperity, and equality. I think were your words. So thank you so much for sharing those examples. And I know time is always so short. And I think you were talking about the fact that it would be great if we could all go out to dinner and continue this discussion. But since at least with our current technology, that's not possible yet. But I want to go back to each of our panel members and just really quickly, what would you say to peers who are starting the collective action or water resilience journey? And I think hopefully we have some of you who might be thinking about engaging in this, and you want some advice. So what would, maybe just going to each of our speakers, kind of one advice that you would have for others who are thinking about taking this journey with us? Over to you, Ewan.
Sure. So I guess the first thing I'd say is sign up to the WRC pledge, right? So by signing up, you've got accountability, and with accountability, we'll do great things. But I'd also say that the important thing is just connect with water stewardship. Think about your profile and think about it not just for the operational parts of your business, but as Claire spoke about, and Wade, think about the broader environment which you're part of. And therefore, that's where you'll find the coalitions. That's where you'll find that you don't just need to think about your budget because you're joining with funds or you're joining with others. And I think that when the reality hits the ground and you go down to see some of these projects in the water basins and the priority ones, it's not easy to get equipment in and out, people in and out. These things take mobilization. And I think that's where the power of a coalition is, that we can kind of do these things at scale and we can do them faster. So yeah, just get very curious and think about that stewardship of your business for the long term.
Thank you so much, Ewan, and certainly a lot of inspiring examples coming from Diageo. Thank you. Claire, coming to you from a GSK perspective. Oh,
No?
sorry.
Hello? Oh, hello. I was going to say, it's fun to go second because Ewan's taken all the great ones. Because we're here, and frankly, I would echo that. Join the Water Resilience Coalition. The access and sharing that is happening is unbelievably supportive, collaborative, and there's no question that's a bad question. So it's a really brilliant forum to also start understanding how to do this, what's your journey. But the second one I would say is actually there are tools out there. You don't need to be a NASA scientist, although that's brilliant what they're doing, to actually start to really map your footprint, your impact. There are simple tools out there, and I would really recommend people use that. And then also really bring the finance and the board with you, because actually this is a resilience piece for the companies or the organizations as much as it is for the planet. So hopefully quick advice.
I would lean in and work with your governments wherever you do business to really understand what the challenges will be in coming decades and not just work around the edges. We need corporate leadership to address the scale and urgency of the crisis. Here in Glasgow, we have tens of thousands of people marching in the street, many of whom are terrified, like many of us are, of a future if we don't actually take the action we know we need to take. Corporate government partnerships, public-private partnerships are absolutely essential. So help us tell your story. There's so much to be quite frightened about in climate change. We need inspiring stories. We need hope. We need those actions that will galvanize others. Don't presume that government knows necessarily what you're doing in the corporate sector. Help us tell your story, and as Ewan said, to recruit more to this movement.
Thank you so much, Secretary Crawford. And I think that call to action, I think that we've heard from all of our speakers today. I know, we've heard about, the Code Red for Humanity, the global water crisis, and, coming from a UNICEF perspective, of course, we're really listening to the voices of young people who, as Secretary Crawford said, are really urging us to act faster and with greater determination because their futures are at stake. And I think we can only feel encouraged that we are bringing solutions to the table. And I think that we have an incredible opportunity that we can use with our leadership, with our expertise, with the resources and our assets to be able to be part of this global solution and showing experiences. So Jason, congratulations to CEO Water Mandate and the Water Resilience Coalition for generating this great momentum, and back over to you. Thank you to our speakers. Yeah.
Great. Thank you, Kellyanne, and thank you to our panelists. I'm going to resist the urge to try to synthesize some of the key takeaways. I'm going to leave that to Sanjeev to do at the end. I will say that part of the change theory of the WRC is to really try to focus that collective action in key regions and to work with the leaders in those regions to demonstrate the possible. Because once you can show how it works in one place, it can be scaled and replicated. What global companies do well is replicate success quickly, and that's what I think we can lean on. And California is a WRC priority region, so really looking forward to the opportunity to collaborate with the leadership of the state government in California, among the other regions. So without further ado, there's an organization that has done more partnership on water than I think I'm aware of. There aren't any ones that have done more of it, which is the Nature Conservancy. And so I'm going to hand over to Andrea to talk us through some of the emerging collaboration around basin health initiatives and also resilient access. Over to you, Andrea.
Thanks, Jason. Okay, so we're going to take this down a little bit, down more to the practical level. We've heard a lot about the ambition setting, pretty exciting, 100 basins with healthy watersheds and 100 million people with access and to water and sanitation. And we're already on the journey, just like there's lots of announcements here, but this is a journey that's already happening. So just to be clear, this is action-packed already. So I have some colleagues joining me today. They're good colleagues, friends that I work with that will come on screen. We're just going to have a little conversation about that. So hopefully they're able to join me online. Andre Ferre and from AB InBev, there we go. Emilia Tenuta from Ecolab, and Vedika from water.org. We've just met, but this is one of the great things about this coalition is we're starting to frame some new partnerships. So we're going to talk through kind of what's really the opportunity when we look out in the field in these basins, in these communities where we're working to address water access and sanitation needs. So can I start with you guys up there on the screen, just to tell us a little bit more, what do you think the real opportunities are now for collective action? And Emilio, I know a lot of this effort around this coalition started with Ecolab, so I'm going to give you the first word on that. What are the tangible opportunities you see right now?
Thanks, Andrea. It's great to be with all of you and my fellow panelists today on this important topic. And let me start with the the awareness of that the release of the sixth IPCC assessment report on climate in August identified that the top physical risks facing companies due to climate change is water stress. And member companies of WRC know this very well and have committed to achieving the net positive water impact in water stress basins where they operate by 2050 and halfway there by 2030. So smart water management will be key to having corporations take action toward a net positive water impact that can deliver two major benefits to companies. First, it can help advance the reduction in energy and greenhouse gas emissions, so the mitigation, supporting the net zero carbon strategies. Second, it can help organizations really adapt to this changing climate through a proactive smart water management strategy that can incorporate insights to enable more resilient operations given the hypersensitivity of the local watershed. And so these water management strategies can also incorporate nature-based solutions to improve supply, quality, and access in these water-stressed basins, which can drive social and community benefits as well as environmental benefits. So there are several water stewardship examples of collaboration that come to mind. We were just talking about California a minute ago. Nothing better than the California Water Action Collaborative as a shining example of how companies can come together. The Texas Water Action Collaborative, which was launched this year, is another great example. So if we do this right, we will help mitigate and help companies adapt to physical risks related to water stress and reduce regulatory risks and also protect against reputational risks as well. So we know this works when we work together. So Andrea, those are just some of the main opportunities to operationalize collective action in basins.
Hello. Those are really great examples of where it's both public and private partnership already, to the Secretary's points about leaning in with your local governments. So, Andre, big footprint with AB InBev as the largest beer producer in the world. So where do you see real opportunities for collaborative action? And maybe there's some challenges, too, you want to share. I know you're really thoughtful on that topic.
Thanks, Andrea. Yes, as the world's local brewer, we certainly see water as the lifeblood of our products, our supply chain, and the communities where we operate. So we value water in both ways that have been touched on here at the global level and at the local level. And I think for the interest of the session, let's focus on the local, where we believe that watershed impact, positive watershed impact, has to be the focus and the starting point of all our discussion, and making sure that we get to measurable impact in terms of availability, quality, quantity of water. And we think the WRC has done well to try and bring these different dynamics and objectives into one agenda, which we think is really, really positive. And we have examples, for instance, where we work with TNC in Mexico in investing in nature-based solutions, aquifer recharge, agriculture, in a way that doesn't just focus on the water availability, but also the communities, and making sure that we have inclusive growth impact locally. But to be honest, you spoke about the challenges. There's no doubt, and a few speakers have mentioned, that collaborative action is key to achieve these objectives at scale. But I've been very surprised how difficult it has been to partner constructively with companies at scale. And that's not pointing fingers at anyone. I'm sure we are as much as to blame the way we operate as others are. But there's something that makes it really difficult somehow for companies to move beyond one NGO and one or two companies who collaborate on one small project. And we really have to find ways of breaking through it. And I see the WRC as critical in this journey. We're putting a lot of stake in the WRC as a platform for helping us. Of course, there are many other important players as well, and we are very supportive of those efforts too. But we have to get beyond what sometimes seems to be like the narrow self-interest of companies of saying, we will do this project and we will tell you how much we've replenished. We have to find ways of looking beyond that in the collective interest, in terms of a group of companies, 5, 10 companies together with 2, 3, 5 NGOs, 2 or 3 local authority players, and showing watershed impact at scale. I think it's the only way we're going to deal with water in a real, tangible way in the context of climate change. Thank you.
Thanks, Andre. Vedika, I know you all are really dedicated, very single-minded and focused on the issue of water access and hygiene. It's so critical to communities around the world. And I just love the words that Jennifer gave us at the top of this with, powerful platforms is what we find in our corporate partners, but these are NGOs with powerful missions. So how is this coalition helping you all in water.org meet your goals?
Thank you. Thanks, Andrea. So, at water.org, we've been incredibly fortunate that we've had the opportunity, and we have the opportunity already to work with multiple members of the Water Resilience Coalition. And we're truly seeing collective actions where companies are supporting programs or supporting initiatives alongside one another, which has 2 big results. One is they're creating cost efficiencies because they're working alongside one another. And the second one, probably even more important, is they're able to amplify impact in priority high-stress basins. So, we're actually seeing on the ground the proverbial 1 + 1 adding to much more than 2, adding to 3 and beyond. And we're seeing this in action, and that's one reason that we feel very strongly about that WRC is such a great platform. So I thought I'll talk about a couple of specific examples where we are engaged with members of the WRC. So Mexico, as I'm sure many of you are aware, there are regions of Mexico which is experiencing the worst drought in more than 3 decades. And several members of the WRC are enabling climate resilient water and sanitation access in these locations where either they have their own operations, as has been mentioned, or they have, through the direct employees, or they have value chains which operate in these areas and are working with the communities in terms of delivering real solutions. Another example is in India, again, where we're working with WRC members, where they're leading, in terms of collective action, creating a model which can be leveraged by others. And I know Andre talked about, and it's been talked about before, that these partnerships are hard. They take a lot of time and effort, but now that there are partnerships which are working, it's really, I would our request would be for other companies to just lead in, see how this is working, and scale it even further in terms of supporting the 2030 goals. Back to you, Andrea.
Great, thanks. And those are great examples. 1 + 1 is more than 2 in a lot of cases. And just because I'm part of the crew too, I wanted to share just a couple examples where it's made a difference for us. Andre mentioned we work on water funds. This is a collective action mechanism for delivering on nature-based solutions to improve water security. And we've done now 43 of them in the world in 13 countries, so that we're starting to get the rhythm down and understanding how to replicate them. But in so many of the cases, it takes a corporate actor to get things going, that early courage money, the catalyst, the leadership, the champion that gets started. And one example of that was in Cape Town, where we now have quite a lot of corporate partners. But in the beginning, it was really just one with a little bit of money, said, let's get going. And so we have a great business case for how removal of invasive species in the catchments of Cape Town is actually returning 2 months of water, equivalent to a desal plant, at 1/10 of the cost. And given those kinds of numbers and the business case that is there, once we can work through the science and the economics of that, then it becomes really easy to connect to the public sector. Back to Secretary Crawford's words on that. And so this year, in the middle of the pandemic, we had a $4 million investment from the city of Cape Town to those efforts. And so that's sort of how that early entry from the corporate sector can be catalytic and then ultimately connect through collective action with the public sector and others. So that's just my little sharing of experience of why it's been great and also helps us meet our goals, right, globally. I want to go just for a minute back to Andre or Emilio, one of you. Can you get more tangible, though? You have corporate commitments that you have made. How does this coalition and the projects that come through it actually tangibly connecting to those goals? And maybe, Andre, I'll go to you first on that.
Sure. So we've made a commitment to have measurable impact in water quality and quantity, a measurable improvement in all the high-risk sites where we operate and the communities where we operate. So that was a brave and bold commitment, but we very quickly realized we need scale and we need partners to get there. So for us, the WRC is critical to enable that. We think it's essential that companies focus on high-risk watersheds in the first instance, because I think if we all focus on those, we'll make a tangible impact on where it's required, but also then to have collective efforts where we can learn around methodology, ways of scaling, different, more effective ways of measurement, remote sensing, etc. And I think the WRC is well placed to help all of us with that. Emilio?
Yeah, I mean, very similar. We have a similar 2030 target. We're aiming to get to net positive water impact by 2050 and halfway there by 2030. And that involves some of these solutions that not only drive operational efficiency, but also, impact in terms of availability and quality and access in the watersheds we operate in that are high risk. And I think, Andrea, you mentioned Cape Town. I would say another shining example that AB InBev and other WRC members are working on currently is the shining example of the TNC project in Sao Paulo, the Sao Paulo Water Fund in the PCJ watershed. A great example of how the benefits of source water protection activities can go beyond water security to encompass other benefits such as mitigating climate change through carbon benefits, adapting to climate change and building resilient communities, to improving human health and well-being through WASH and job opportunities to protect against actions resulting in community benefits there. So to me, I think those are some examples of how the WRC is leaning in on some of these critical opportunities to really work together to do more, because the exponential impact of us working in these watersheds is so much greater than if we did it on our own.
Great, thank you. And Vedika, this is going to be last word to you. So tell us about how this coalition is helping you really meet your goals, but also kind of help us understand the value you see in terms of scale. What comes next? How do we get to scale? Thank you.
Sure. So, I think this point has been made earlier in the conversation. It's really about leveraging strengths, right? And I think this point has been made in terms of no one actor can do it alone. And similarly, I would say no one corporate can do it alone, right? So it's about leveraging strengths. And if we just talk about corporate partners here for a minute, there's many common strengths, right? So in terms of understanding the consumers, corporates themselves being large consumers of water, in terms of their influence, their ability to scale, the financial and human resources, the ability to work with governments across all levels, right? So at the country, at the state, at the region, very locally in where they operate. But there are also some strengths which are very specific to individual corporates. So, for example, Ecolab, the way they understand, the sector, the water in terms of usage, efficiencies, etc. Or like GSK talked about, or Andre talked about, what API brings to it. And I think that's really the harder part, right? to withstand the temptation of trying to do everything on your own, but then saying, okay, how can I leverage my corporate partner's strength? How can I leverage what the NGO knows in terms of the communities? How can I leverage what the NGOs are able to innovate? And then finally partnering in with the governments. And I think, and we think, the sustainability is when the governments really adopt as if it's their program. And that's when I think we've all achieved what we really are setting out to do here.
Wonderful. We're going to leave that there. That's a great closing statement from Vedika about where next. But first, we need to get the rest of those companies signed up. Thank you to CO Water Mandate for launching this great coalition. We appreciate it very much. And back to you, Jason.
Thank you, Andrea. And thank you to the panelists for your insights, terrific remarks, and also just pragmatically, thank you for delivering them so succinctly and on time. So we have a few minutes left. I'm going to hand to my colleague, Sanjeev Chadha, to take us home.
Thank you, Jason. And I'd like to firstly thank, aside from Jason, Kellyanne, as well as Andrea, and of course our various speakers. That was a very, very rich 1 hour of discussion. And I think it really demonstrated the great work that is being done individually by companies, the power of working together, and therefore the tremendous potential that the Water Resilience Coalition holds for all of us and for our mission. I have the tough task of trying to summarize what was talked about, but I also want to, for the benefit of our listeners, talk a bit more about some of the salient features of the WRC for those who might be interested in learning more and perhaps the organizations joining the coalition. So firstly, of course, Sanda set us on our path, reminding us about the UN Secretary General Code Red, calling this Code Red for humanity, the imperative of adaptation and resilience, and urging companies, each and every company, to elevate their efforts, and her encouraging words regarding the Water Resilience Coalition. Kellyanne then first talked about and announced the partnership of UNICEF with the WRC. Let's give a round of applause welcoming UNICEF as a partner. And we really look forward to being able to leverage their expertise in vulnerable children and communities and bringing that to bear to the WRC's mission. I thought the panel did a great job between Claire and Iwan, talking not only about the good work being done by their companies, but also the imperative of working together. The imperative of joining a coalition like the WRC in terms of being able to multiply the impact and the speed and the scale of their actions as well. And I thought they made a great point. The fact that each of the member companies has a unique expertise. And unlocking the unique expertise is what happens with the benefit of working together. And then really multiplying the scale of that expertise. And I thought Secretary Wade did a great job reminding us of the real-time impact of climate change, the need to upgrade not just the hardware, but the software as well. And importantly, reminding us that business in many ways is truly the engine of a successful partnership. And indeed, it is a partnership in every which way. And therefore, the need for corporate leaders to drive the pace of progress against the crisis. The second panel, which Andrea led with the folks from Ecolab, AB InBev, and Water.org, I think underlined the win-win nature of water stewardship. Not just something which is critical for businesses and their long-term success, but also to have a positive social impact in the communities that they serve, without which, frankly, there is no business. And we've experienced that. I was in PepsiCo earlier. I was used to head up the business in Asia Pacific, Middle East, and Africa, and I've seen both sides of that coin play out. I thought they underlined the importance of nature-based solutions very well. Andre made a great point about the imperative of looking beyond self-interest when we are looking at working in partnership. And I think that is indeed a key in terms of unlocking the scale and the speed in which we can make progress as coalitions. And then, of course, Vedika reminded us of 1 + 1 equal to 11, was it? Or maybe 100. But no doubt the power of synergy coming to life through these coalitions. And Andrea, your point about corporate action catalyzing a lot of the work which the TNC has been involved with was a great point. And of course, the fact that once one has the rail set, once the experience is gained and the blueprint is formed, one can really leverage that experience in terms of scaling it up, as you folks have done across 13 different countries as well. Now, having said that, I do want to share with our listeners and viewers some other salient aspects which makes me very excited about the Water Resilience Coalition, especially for those who might not be familiar with it, and why I really believe it is a powerful, purpose-built coalition with very, very high potential. You must have heard in the last 1 hour, and indeed in the last 1 week, 3 key themes, common themes being talked about often for good reason. First, the urgent need for bold and faster action. Second, the absolutely undisputed, unambiguous need for collective action, for working together for faster progress. And the crying need to be just and equitable and catering to those most in need. Now, what makes me excited about the WRC is that these are the very 3 pillars on which the WRC has been founded. The very, very 3 pillars. And the WRC, although very new, it was founded just last year, is off to a very promising start. Not only do they have clear-cut goals set, time-bound goals set, they have a very strong core of members, and I'll show you that membership in a minute or two. With that membership rapidly expanding, as Jason pointed out, with 2 members, which he announced, 3 members, in fact, just now, with work underway already in the 11 priority basins out of the 100 basins that they are targeting across 5 countries, and impressive work being done on defining the gold standard for the ambition for global corporate water stewardship, net positive water impact. More importantly, what gives me confidence of the fast strides that the WRC can make is the way it has been structured. First, they're not trying to boil the ocean, pardon my pun. They've got very, very focused goals. They're focused on rejuvenating stressed river basins and focused on providing resilient wash to the needy. Second, the high-caliber, like-minded companies who have joined hands, not only are they working really well individually, but they see the power of partnerships and they joined hands to work together on the WRC. And not just that, third, they're partnering. And sorry, can I have the slide, please, which shows the members? I want you to quickly have a look at the members that we have already. As Jason mentioned, there are 27 in all, and they are from diverse industries. You've got agriculture, you've got food and beverage, you've got textile, you've got all kinds of organizations, including software. On the other hand, diverse from a geographic standpoint. You already have Korea, Japan, the UK, Europe, and of course the US. And I know there are many other members who are joining in a very short while as well. And each of these members are committed to be leaders in water stewardship. Each of these members are significant players in water. And each of these members have a very, very clear role to play and the expertise that they're bringing to the coalition. And as I said, they're partnering with equally strong companies, our partners. And each of these partners, as you will see in the next slide, have their specific expertise in very relevant areas in line with the objectives of the coalition. And the TNC is a great example. UNICEF is a great example, the latest partner, and many, many others as well. And last but not least, the fact that the Water Resilience Coalition has the benefit of the personal involvement of many CEOs of the global companies who are the members. The personal involvement and commitment, which therefore ensures rapid action, addressing issues as soon as they arise, giving proper guidance, and of course, very closely monitoring results. So with that, I think I don't have time for more, but I would certainly say, or echo Ivan's words, that I'd urge companies who are listening to come join the pledge and sign the pledge of the Water Resilience Coalition. And if your organization is interested in learning more or joining the coalition, please make a note of the two names on the screen, Andre and Ilsa, and they'll be very, very happy to talk to you more about that. So thanks again to our speakers and our organizers, and time to get to work. Thank you.